your home with Buildaid on Mix 93.8. Proudly brought to you by AfriSam. AfriSam, creating concrete possibilities.
Buildaid on Mix 93.8 FM. Good evening. Kay in the studio looking after all of us, and Simon looking after the desk.
Okay, so we're talking about kitchens tonight, and the answer to my question is very loosely related to kitchens, in that you could make this thing in a kitchen part of the answer. So I'm looking for a song. It's a story, and I'm going to give you a very cryptic clue to start off with. There's a couple in the song, and they meet at a bar called O'Malley's. That's all I'm going to tell you for now. So if you know which song I'm talking about, and just remember there's something in the song that you could make in a kitchen, SMS us on 41348.
Okay, everyone knows that Mix plays the greatest music. And what does Al play 10 minutes ago?
Your favorite
Run
song.
to the Water by Live. You know how hard it is to put your top 10 together? Hey, Simon, have you ever tried to do that? And eventually you go, no, maybe it's my top 30 or my top 40. Well, that's my number one. Played on Mix. I'm chatting to Gavin and Mark Cronje from Easylife Kitchens. Gav, Mark, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And it's good to have you on the show again. We're going to go through all sorts of things, how to design a kitchen, what other contractors you have to work with, and then we'll finish up talking costs, and what do kitchens cost in relationship to the home, and so on. But Gav, let's start firstly with, I'm a homeowner, I'm going to build a new home, and I need to design my kitchen. When do I start thinking about it or doing that?
So I think on a new build, I think you would tend to start looking at that when the space is built and you're starting to visualize everything. But in reality, it's when your plans start to go to working drawings, because there's a lot of impact that kitchens have on the build, and particularly the way that people build nowadays with foundations, the trend being raft foundations and stuff like that. So it has such an impact to start early, and planning in front and ahead helps you save a lot of frustration later on.
We see a lot of drawings that go through to tender, and even some homes that start with the building actually start with the kitchen hasn't been detailed correctly. And it's sometimes just a line that shows where the sink is and the cross where the fridge is, and there's not a lot of detail. Now, obviously, what you've just said, Gavin, is that a company like Easylife and you guys would be involved with the architect while they're still designing.
Well, I think we're certainly involved with the client and the client's dream. So I think if they're serious about it and they want to get that information onto the house build plan, as mentioned before, it just takes the frustration out of trying to be certain that that plumbing point is now in the right spot, and it is actually where you want the stove or the fridge. And the workflow, architects are experts, and their expertise are designing homes. And you have the specialist contractors that design the areas within the home. So the workflow of the kitchen, the space, the storage, and the motion of the kitchen and how it functions is done by specialists like us.
Sometimes a window on a floor plan may seem irrelevant, but it could be lined up with another window above. And remove the fridge, it bumps the window out. So the architect's going to know how to deal with those things.
It's important that the information goes back to the architect for exactly that, because a designer would maybe want, from an internal point of view, to change it, but he is not considering the external part of the house. So exactly that, the information needs to go from us then back to the architect to get that information onto the plans.
Gavin, do you find there are a number of stages in the design? Initially maybe getting a concept together and possibly the finishes, and then a client, when the building's going up, they tend to visualize a little bit better and may choose different finishes and so on.
So I think, the general feeling out there is that people go and say, they want to design a pretty kitchen and make it work. And I think the reality of it is that you need to start with the practical side first, and that would impact the flow of the kitchen and all of that. And that is just a concept, so your rough drawing would then suffice for going back onto plan. So you don't have to spend and make all those final decisions based on the working drawings or the initial concept, because it's certainly making a kitchen look pretty is way easier than getting it practical.
Yeah. And as you've said, getting the plumbing points in the right place, and that's quite important, because if you're going to look at it again when the house is up, it's difficult to move these things around and expensive.
There's a possibility that it can't be done.
Sure. As you said, there are a lot of homes built now with a raft foundation. What that means is the foundations and the floor slab are in one piece. More difficult to make changes.
A lot more difficult. And you don't want to chop or chase into that, because you're playing around with the structural integrity of the home then.
Yeah. When we come back, I want to chat to you about the different materials and the related costs to those materials. Buildaid on Mix 93.8. My name's Graham Alexander. I'm chatting to Gavin and Mark from Easylife Kitchens. And I always have to mention that these two guys are really good in their business, but they're both world champions and multiple South African champions in motor racing. Are you guys still racing?
At the moment, not. I'm just doing a bit of driver coaching for some youngsters, putting a bit back. But I guess the inherent sportsman in us drives us in our business, and we take the same sort of attitude through into our business. So it's been a good life lesson.
And Mark?
Yeah, at the moment I've hung up my gloves, but there is some stuff in the pipeline that I've been working on, and hopefully that'll come to fruition.
It's not because we're too old.
A lot of sportsmen are very successful in business. I think it's a lot to do with the discipline. And maybe in motor racing, it's also got to do with not being scared and getting on with it. Right. When a kitchen is put together, it's made of a whole lot of components, doors and tops and what have you. But these components are also made of different materials. So help me out here, Gav and Mark. Which are the materials or components that impact most on the cost of a kitchen?
So I think, the design, of course, is the ultimate thing from a workflow point of view. But you can take a design and cost it in various materials and hardware items, and have radically different outcomes as far as the cost is concerned. So I think the materials nowadays that we are using, there are some materials out there that are reasonably priced, well priced, and that will give you a lower outright cost and a nice finish. And you could have exactly, as I said, the same finish. And when you're going to the solid timbers with a washed effect, the costs ramp up radically, and that's just on a material use. Of course, you have the trend at the moment is all the nice soft closing drawers, and there's 3 different types within our brand that we use, and we use the Bloom range, which is the guarantees are superior, and if you look at the variation in cost from one drawer, a soft closing drawer, to the next, you could be in at 1,000 Rand a drawer. So if you start calculating how many drawers you're putting in your kitchen, you can quickly find out where the costs lie.
You mentioned solid wood that may have a brush finish on it, but if you're spraying solid wood, and I'm asking this question from ignorance, could you use a composite or a pressed sort of wood? Because if it's sprayed, it doesn't really matter what it's been sprayed onto, or does it?
Correct, Joe. I think the perception out there in the marketplace is you've got this piece of superwood that they've now sprayed, which is a composite wood, pressed wood, and it should be a much reduced cost. But there's other underlying costs that lie with spray painted goods. And we were chatting about it earlier, saying that the waste material, these guys are dumping waste material that's harmful to the environment, and the regulation is that they're responsible for that waste material for 20 years. So if you take a company like that and you're using a responsible company, all of a sudden a composite board that's been spray painted is now competing with solid timber.
Yeah, and I suppose spray painting solid wood would be a bit silly.
Well, there is a market for it, because you get the grain out of it, and the people love the grain, and obviously with the color.
Let's talk about costs, and it's something that we as Buildaid, it's sort of one of our favorite subjects. It's part of who we are. But it's also a bit like how long's a piece of string, particularly with a kitchen. There are just so many factors that can impact on cost. But to be honest, there are perceptions out there that kitchens are expensive. What would your take be on that, Gavin?
Graham, I think a kitchen is probably it is, as a single item in the house, one of the most expensive items to When I say kitchen, possibly kitchen and cabinetry. It's not a cheap exercise. It has a big bearing on how much time do you spend in the kitchen, So if you take a house build, and we always judge it on 5 to 6% of the house build for your kitchen alone, would be a good figure to budget. You can spend 12%. You can spend 4%. And the question earlier with the material use point of view, and possibly how many drawers do you put in your kitchen, that's what impacts that, and that's what drives that. You can do a kitchen for 4%, and you can also do a kitchen for 12.
It's all relative. We speak to so many people about budgets and and what things cost. And if you say, I'm going to spend 2 million rand on my home and the kitchen is 200,000 rand, it's part of that cost. You can make it 180 and so on. But what we tend to do is on the high ticket items, like a kitchen, is some are added on top. And go, look, I was going to spend 2 million, but now my kitchen's another 200. No, it's part of that 2 million.
Yes.
It's not an extra.
Absolutely. I think the thing is that you get a figure from a builder who's quoted you to build your home, and you see this figure of cabinetry in your quote, and I'll just or budget, and he gives you a PC item of 300,000 rand for your cabinetry, from your kitchen to your bedroom cupboards to your vanities, and it's a large sum of money. When you start getting quotes from your kitchen companies, you soon realize that you're not getting through with it on your budget, and that's where it becomes important from a budgeting point of view. Is if the builder's given you a quote for X, and you take 6% of that, and you can see that this is not relative and it's not going to work, you should be questioning some of the other PC items that are in there, because possibly they are going on the low end of the budget to secure the work.
So, Gavin, the guideline is 6%, more or less, of your building budget should be spent on the kitchen.
I agree with that.
100%. Kay, how did we do?
I'm so amazed how many people got it right. So let me tell you the answer. It's and I just have to say, we've had some very, very interesting autocorrects coming through when people trying to spell this song. It's the Pina Colada song. Actually, that's what we know it as. It's Escape by Rupert Holmes, and it's actually such a cute story, even if it is a little bit and Simon has agreed to play out tonight with our Pina Colada song, and hopefully you'll be sipping one of those on the beach in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, as usual, thanks so much. Simon, thanks for looking after the desk, and Ian for videographing the show. But a special guest to Gavin and Mark Cronje for coming to chat to us. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be doing this again next Wednesday between 6 and 7. Up next is the greatest show on earth. Catch you later.
Your home with Buildaid on Mix brings you all sorts of interesting info about building. Graham Alexander chats to different guests every Wednesday evening between 6 and 7. Proudly brought to you by AfriSam. AfriSam, creating concrete possibilities.